There is a strange kind of loneliness that has nothing to do with being alone. You can sit at a crowded table, laugh at the right moments, answer messages, make plans, and still feel as though some part of you is somewhere else. And then there are moments when everyone leaves. The room becomes quiet. Your phone is face down. Nobody needs an answer from you. Nobody is watching. And instead of feeling empty, you finally breathe. You think more clearly. You hear yourself again. Maybe you've wondered whether that makes you unusual. Maybe someone has told you that you spend too much time alone, that you're too quiet, too serious, too much inside your own head. But there is an important distinction people often miss. Some people withdraw from others because they are afraid of connection. Others seek solitude because they have learned how valuable their own mind can be. Those are not the same thing, and if you genuinely enjoy doing certain things alone, it may reveal something deeper than simply being introverted. It may reveal that you've developed a relationship with yourself that many people never take the time to build. The first sign is simple. You prefer to think through important problems before asking other people what they think. Something goes wrong at work. A relationship becomes complicated. You have to decide whether to stay, leave, accept an opportunity, or change direction. For many people, the immediate response is to call someone. What would you do? Do you think I'm making the right decision? Tell me what you think. There is nothing wrong with asking for advice. The problem begins when advice becomes a substitute for judgment. You may do something different. You sit with the problem. You let the first emotional reaction settle. You consider what you know. You imagine the consequences. You may still ask someone you trust for another perspective, but you don't hand them the responsibility of deciding your life. That is a subtle form of independence. You understand that another person's opinion can be useful without becoming an instruction. The Stoics understood this distinction well. Epictetus repeatedly emphasized that we are responsible for our own judgments, choices, and responses. Other people can provide information. They cannot live the consequences of your decisions for you. That is why solitude can become a training ground for self-trust. Every time you resist the urge to immediately seek reassurance, you give yourself an opportunity to discover, I can think this through. And that sentence becomes powerful over time, because confidence isn't always believing that you will make the perfect decision. Sometimes confidence is knowing that even if you make a mistake, you can face it, learn from it, and choose again. The second sign is that you process difficult emotions when nobody is around. This doesn't mean you hide your feelings, it means you don't always need an audience to understand them. After an argument, you might take a walk, instead of immediately explaining yourself to 5 people. After disappointment, you may spend an evening alone. You replay what happened, not just what the other person did. You ask what happened inside you. Why did that comment bother me so much? Was I angry, or was I embarrassed? Was I actually hurt, or did I feel rejected? Did I overreact? Did I ignore something important? That kind of questioning requires honesty, and honesty is difficult when your main goal is to protect your image. When you process emotions privately, you can stop performing them. You don't have to convince anyone that you're right. You don't have to make yourself the victim. You don't have to pretend you're unaffected. You can simply observe what is happening. This is one of the most useful forms of emotional discipline. Instead of saying, I feel terrible, you begin distinguishing between disappointment, resentment, shame, fear, jealousy, grief, frustration, or insecurity. The more precisely you understand an emotion, the less mysterious it becomes. And when an emotion becomes understandable, it becomes easier to respond to rather than obey. That is very Stoic. You are not trying to become emotionless. You are trying to stop allowing every emotion to become a command. The third sign is something much quieter. You have private rituals that nobody else really understands. Maybe you take the same walk every morning. Maybe you sit with coffee before speaking to anyone. Maybe you journal at night. Maybe you drive without music. Maybe there is a particular chair in your home where you think. Maybe you simply enjoy walking through a store, a park, or a quiet neighborhood alone. Nobody assigned these rituals to you. You created them, and that matters, because a person who can create meaningful experiences without needing an audience is less dependent on external stimulation. You don't need every moment to become an event. You don't need someone else to confirm that the experience is worth having. A quiet morning can be enough. A long walk can be enough. Thinking can be enough. That doesn't make you superior to people who prefer constant company. It simply means your attention isn't completely dependent on what is happening outside you. And that becomes increasingly valuable in a world designed to interrupt you. Every notification asks for your attention. Every platform competes for it. Every advertisement wants a piece of it. Every opinion wants a reaction. Solitude gives you something rare, a moment in which you decide where your mind goes. The fourth sign is perhaps the most important. You can make major decisions without needing everyone to agree with you. You may listen, you may gather information, you may ask people who have experience, but eventually you go somewhere quiet and make the decision yourself. This becomes especially difficult as we get older because the stakes become higher. A career change, a marriage, a divorce, a move to another city, a decision about money, a decision about how you want to spend the remaining decades of your life. At that point, approval becomes tempting. If 10 people tell you that your choice is wrong, doubt becomes loud. But consensus is not the same as truth, and disagreement is not proof that you made a mistake. The Stoic approach is not to ignore other people. It is to separate their judgment from yours. Listen carefully, then decide according to your values. You can respect someone and still disagree with them. You can love someone and still choose a different path. You can accept criticism without surrendering your authority over your own life. That is intellectual independence, and it protects you from one of the quietest forms of self-betrayal, living a life that makes sense to everyone except you. The fifth sign is even simpler. You genuinely enjoy your own company, not because you have given up on people, not because you believe relationships are unnecessary. You simply don't experience being alone as a problem that needs to be solved. There is a difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness says, I wish someone were here because I don't feel whole without them. Solitude says, I enjoy people, but I am also comfortable here. That distinction changes relationships. When you cannot tolerate being alone, you may accept relationships that are wrong for you simply because they prevent silence. You may stay in conversations that exhaust you. You may tolerate disrespect because being rejected feels worse. You may remain connected to someone who repeatedly hurts you because separation feels unbearable. But when your own company becomes peaceful, desperation loses some of its power. You can walk away. You can say no. You can wait. You can be single without believing that your life is incomplete. And strangely enough, this often makes you better at love, because you are no longer asking another person to rescue you from yourself. You can choose someone because you value them, not because you are terrified of being without them. That is a much healthier foundation for connection. The sixth sign is the one that reveals the deepest level of self-awareness. You examine your own behavior without someone forcing you to. Maybe it happens at night. You remember a conversation from earlier that day. Something about it doesn't sit right, so you revisit it. Not to obsess, to understand. Why did I say that? Why did I become defensive? Why did I agree when I actually disagreed? Why did I care so much about being liked in that moment? What was I protecting? What would I do differently next time? Nobody demanded this reflection. There is no reward for it. You do it because some part of you wants to understand the person you are becoming. This is where solitude becomes more than comfort. It becomes a form of self-confrontation, because when the noise disappears, excuses become harder to maintain. You begin noticing patterns. The same type of conflict keeps appearing. The same insecurity keeps influencing your decisions. The same kind of person keeps receiving too much of your energy. The same promise to yourself keeps getting broken, and eventually, awareness creates responsibility. You cannot change what you refuse to see. This is one of the reasons self-reflection can feel uncomfortable. It removes the easy explanation. Instead of saying, "They made me angry," you may eventually ask, "Why did I give their behavior so much control over me?" Instead of saying, "Nobody understands me," you might ask, "Have I actually communicated what I need?" Instead of saying, "This is just who I am," you may wonder whether it is truly your character or simply an old pattern you've never questioned. That is where personal freedom begins, not when you control everyone around you. When you become capable of examining yourself honestly. And there is another ability that often develops alongside these 6 habits. You become comfortable with unstructured time. You can sit in a waiting room without immediately reaching for your phone. You can take a walk without needing a podcast. You can drive without filling every second with noise. You can stare out of a window and let your mind wander. This may seem insignificant. It isn't. When every empty moment is immediately filled, you never discover what your mind does when it isn't being fed. Ideas appear. Memories connect. Problems become clearer. Questions surface that were buried beneath constant stimulation. Some of your best thinking may happen when you aren't visibly accomplishing anything. And this matters because modern culture has trained us to confuse activity with progress. If you're moving, you're productive. If you're answering messages, you're important. If you're busy, you're valuable. But your mind needs periods in which it isn't responding to something. Solitude gives you that space, and slowly, you may discover something even more important. You begin to hear which thoughts are actually yours. For years, you may have carried invisible instructions from other people. Get a better job, make more money, settle down, be more outgoing. Don't disappoint anyone. Choose the respectable path, look successful, be available, keep everyone happy. But when you spend enough time away from those voices, another question begins to appear. What do I actually want? That question can be uncomfortable, because sometimes the answer doesn't match the life you've been building. Maybe the goal you chased for 20 years was never really yours. Maybe you don't want more status. Maybe you want more time. Maybe you don't need a larger circle. Maybe you want 3 people you can trust. Maybe you don't need everyone to understand you. Maybe you simply need to stop misunderstanding yourself. This is where Stoicism becomes especially useful. The Stoics were not teaching people to escape society. They were teaching people not to surrender their inner judgment to society. Marcus Aurelius held enormous responsibilities, yet repeatedly returned to the importance of governing his own mind. That principle still matters. You can participate fully in the world without allowing the world to decide who you are. You can have friends without needing constant company. You can love deeply without becoming dependent on approval. You can listen to criticism without letting criticism define your worth. You can spend an evening alone without interpreting it as evidence that something is wrong with you. Solitude, at its best, does not make you less connected. It makes your connections more deliberate. You begin asking different questions. Not simply, do they like me, but can I be honest around them? Not, will they stay, but is this relationship worthy of the person I am becoming? Not, how many people know me, but who actually understands me? Those questions lead somewhere different. They lead away from performance and toward alignment. And perhaps that is the deepest benefit of learning to be alone. You stop treating yourself as a problem that needs constant distraction. You become someone you can sit with, someone you can listen to, someone you can disagree with and still respect. Someone whose mistakes you can examine without destroying your sense of worth. Someone whose future you can trust yourself to navigate. That is self-trust. And self-trust is not built through affirmations, it is built through evidence. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, every time you tell yourself the truth, every time you make a difficult decision without needing applause, Every time you sit with an uncomfortable emotion instead of escaping it. Every time you walk away from something that violates your values. Every time you spend an hour alone and discover that nothing is missing. You are teaching yourself, I can rely on me. That may be one of the quietest forms of strength a person can develop, because eventually, life will put you in situations where nobody can give you the answer. There will be decisions you have to make alone, losses you have to process privately, changes nobody can prepare you for, moments when the people you normally rely on simply don't know what to say. And in those moments, the relationship you've built with yourself matters, not because you won't need anyone. You will. Human beings need connection. But needing people is very different from needing their permission to exist. You can love others without abandoning yourself. You can belong without performing. You can listen without obeying. You can stand alone without becoming isolated. So if you've ever felt strange because you enjoy walking alone, thinking alone, traveling alone, eating alone, making decisions alone, or simply sitting in silence while everyone else is searching for something to occupy their attention, don't rush to label that part of yourself as a weakness. Look at what that solitude is doing to you. Is it helping you understand yourself? Is it making you more patient, more thoughtful, more selective, more emotionally honest, more capable of choosing rather than reacting? If so, then perhaps you are not withdrawing from life. Perhaps you are preparing yourself to meet life without constantly needing it to reassure you. The Stoics would remind us that the quality of our lives depends heavily on the quality of our judgments, and your judgments become clearer when you learn to hear yourself beneath the noise. The goal isn't to become someone who needs nobody. The goal is to become someone who can be with others without losing themselves, and be alone without feeling incomplete. That is freedom. Not having everything you want, not being admired by everyone, not controlling what happens around you. Simply knowing that wherever life takes you, you will still have one person capable of walking through it with you, yourself. And perhaps, the next time you find yourself choosing silence over noise, reflection over distraction, or your own company over a room full of people, you won't wonder whether something is wrong with you. You might recognize what you've actually been building all along: a mind you can trust, a character that doesn't depend on applause, and a life that finally feels like it belongs to you. If this way of thinking resonates with you, the next video may take you one step deeper into that same kind of inner freedom.